You're part. You're
Who the fuck do you think you are? You think you can just have a YouTube channel for yourself?
yeah. I think I can.
Where's that story that you were saying?
Yeah, go through.
No, let him go. Let him go.
Go through. Go.
Let him go. Right.
Hey, how's it going? This is fun. Oh, we got a boyfriend. This is good. If people walk by, they know it's real. Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump?
So it's interesting because I was talking to one of my ex-colleagues the other day, and he was very adamant about the fact that we have to vote for Hillary, and I told him I wouldn't vote because it's a non-choice, right? There's no choice there, and I understand that there's this
Not even the Green Party
interest
or the Libertarian Party.
Well, obviously not the Libertarian Party. I mean, I'm not fucking Simikov right here, but whatever. I mean, no, not obviously not the Libertarian Party. Obviously, the Green Party has more appeal to me. I might, if I was an American citizen, vote for the Green Party. This being said, I can talk about something where I can actually vote, which is France, coming up in the next election, right? A socialist government, which is anything but socialist in France, that has been a train wreck completely. The French left, which is completely in disarray. The only person that could actually bring something to the game that would be interesting with the resurgence of, the FN, so far right politics, and with that of
Front National,
and with that of the far of the right, which is becoming more and more far right.
Everyone in Europe's going to the right.
Everybody's going to the right. What would be there? There's going to be so the French system works right with two turns, right? A two-turn system, and the second deuxième tour, right? It would probably be a candidate from the FN, Marine Le Pen, versus somebody from the right. And in that context, I don't know. I don't know what I would do, because is it privileged for me, somebody not living in France right now? First of all, I ask myself the question, should I vote in France because I don't live there? It doesn't really have a huge implication in my life. Second of all, if I wasn't to vote, would that be because I come from a place of privilege, which is one of the arguments that we put forward by people on the Hillary camp about the Bernie camp, and you know what? I think that's bullshit. Right? Because I think that one of the things, and one of the most important things for our generation, people that don't really believe in that binary of you have to vote for bullshit because if not you're going to get even worse bullshit, is actually, well, no, I don't have to. I can work in other ways to change the system, and it doesn't necessarily have to be through active politics or through the Democratic Party. It can be through other stuff, So in the context of France, what we're seeing now is very scary. I mean, the whole context in France is very, very scary. What we saw with the burkini was completely ridiculous.
People in Quebec are saying that now too.
Well, I mean, people in Quebec...
Jean-François Lisée. Horrible.
What's interesting with Jean-François Lisée, and I saw this on Facebook today, which was a very interesting thing put together, like a sort of meme, was basically something he said 2 years, and it was like 2 years each time, and something he said 2 years before and 2 years after, and it always changed. So he was for the charter, and then he said he was against the charter, but he had to be for the charter because the charter was the name of the game when he was in government, and now he says he's against the niqab. Right? He's against...
and soon he's going to be pro the niqab. He's going to switch again.
No, he's not going to switch because there's no political gain for that. I mean, if the niqab was something that had sway with, the regions in Quebec or, other communities within Quebec, if they could win an election based off of their support for the niqab or whatever, I mean, whatever, they would do it. I mean, this is completely political. Our Puritanism, 100%. Okay, we got a SUV. Is it gonna come by? Is it? Oh, Mercedes.
100%.
Nice car. What do you think, Jimmy, as a Jew? What do you think about BDS?
Ooh. Jesus.
A Porsche, but as you guys can see, we're making a left wing. We're making a left wing video in a very posh neighborhood. So,
what I think about the situation is, I think BDS is a very acceptable form of political protest, and
so
everyone.
So
let me go. Let me speak. So people are always like, oh, Palestinian resistance and the liberation movement, no, they're violent, and they condemn them when they're violent, and when they do nothing, they keep building. And BDS is a form of nonviolent protest. And I mean, no matter what the Palestinians do, there's going to be hysteria. I mean, if they, any type of protest they do will meet with hysteria within the Jewish community, which is what I know very well, within American and Canadian society. And you see in the United States where they're starting to pass legislation that actually
Ontario
didn't pass. But in the United States it does.
Well,
the United States it went further.
To pass it, yeah.
The United States it goes much further, where they're we are private equity and pensions are not allowed to do BDS, and that's law. People states will pass that law.
You mean favorable to BDS? Favorable to BDS.
If you pass, if a pension fund divest from Israel, then they get certain sanctions from the government, or they get in trouble somehow. And I think that's bad. It's a way of destroying freedom of speech and people's right to do stuff. But it kind of reaches. It speaks to, I think, a very important part of BDS, a very important problem with it, which is, and it also, it also kind of hits the mark where comparisons between South Africa and Palestine kind of fail, because in South Africa the indigenous people were the majority, huge majority over the whites. They were starting, the protest movements were starting to develop, and they could have just overthrown the whites. And so ending apartheid was more about trying to keep social peace and trying to keep privilege, which ended up happening. South African society hasn't changed in any major way since the end of apartheid, even though now that there's political power.
The ANC, it's been neoliberal policy that's been forward. The ANC elites have profited from that neoliberal policy. You now have a black, quote-unquote, African class, right, indigenous class that profits, right, from this neoliberal regime. Whereas during apartheid, there wasn't really, an African class or indigenous class that profited from that, right? In the context of Palestine and Israel, you can say that maybe people within the PLO and people within Hamas or whatever profit from the conflict. There's people within Israel that profit from the conflict. At the end of the day, it's a weapons, the military industrial complex that is profiting from this conflict, from the conflict. But this being said, what I want to get is, where are the limits that you put on BDS? Where are the limits that you put on BDS in the context of Israel?
The strategy of BDS. I think it's good that people are finding ways of kind of condemning the atrocities and the outrageous kind of policies of the Israeli government. At the same time, if you're actually trying to change it, I do think that it's going to fail. Because the American government, Western Europe, is never going to give up on Israel. They are very, very interested in destroying and keeping down any type of pan-Arab movement, any type of... Israel is like their junior partner and keeping the Arab world in check. So every time anyone gets out of hand, if you look at what Israel did to Nasser, but they were constantly trying to humiliate Egypt when Nasser was in power. Same thing with Syria. Golan Heights. Destroying. Part of Israel's job as a henchman for America was to destroy
Western imperialism in general.
Yeah, it's always been, even Napoleon.
When you look at the Suez crisis.
The Suez crisis.
Yeah,
exactly.
The Suez crisis. They were with the British and the French. Exactly.
So Israel, in that sense, it was always envisioned as an imperial power. from the left to the right, Jabotinsky to Ben Gurion saw Israel as kind of the enforcer of, and the first president of Israel too, Chaim Weizmann. They were very, very articulate about how Israel, in their justification to the state to the west, would be the protector of Western influence in the region, Western interests. Napoleon, for example, and Ben Weider, who, big knocker in the Jewish community, would always, he wrote
like
an essay.
No,
I mean, him. No. Ben Weider was he brought Arnold Schwarzenegger to North America. He was this big workout guy, and he was short. I guess he kind of identified with Napoleon.
Yeah.
And so he wrote about how Napoleon was good to the Jews, and even a lot of Jews really talk about Napoleon was the first Zionist. There's a great book called The History of Zionism. Not the history of the Jews, the history of Zionism, Nachal Sokola. And the preface is by Lord Balfour. So even Zionism itself was always kind of tied. He was like a big guy in the World Zionist Congress. That's what
what's interesting with that is that actually the person that gave the right to vote for Jewish citizens within the French Republic was Robespierre, right?
And people
people despise Robespierre and think that Robespierre was a tyrant, blah blah blah, all of that. When actually, in many ways, he was a proto-Marxist, right? Well, what I find interesting in Canadian politics today is that we have a very what I like to call the amazing race, right? Because the conservative race, you're seeing basically all of the racists, right, come out and say all of this, everybody is trying to up each other on how racist they can be, it's like how low can you go type of thing, and it's interesting to see, Kelly Leach, exactly. I never, it doesn't ring a bell, probably because I like to block out negative influences or negative stuff in my life. And so Kelly Leach, we all know her, Barbaric Cultural Act, the Hotline, and then Drake came off with, I think there was an influence. It's actually interesting because that Hotline
Bling.
Yeah, that Hotline came out basically around the same time that Drake dropped the Hotline Bling, right? And
this is true.
Hotline Bling is amazing, right? I love that song. I love Drake. If you ever watch this, I love you. I really think that you should be the leader of the NDP one day. You would be a fantastic leader of the NDP. I mean, anyways, we can't get lower than where we are now.
Oh yeah, great working class guy.
Yeah, great working class guy.
Now.
With his 2 mansions.
So he had 1 mansion and he had wild parties. And the neighbors were complaining, so he just bought out the neighbors.
Oh. Okay, he bought the neighbors. Was that him? He bought the neighbors under their house.
Parties.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a real working class hero, right?
I mean, people like to party.
I want to have a party, so let's just buy another mansion,